A really cool feature on these newer Lumix cameras is the real-time LUT feature. Real-time LUT bakes in the look to your log footage. And this is super helpful if you want to do log-to-log conversions. So if you're shooting vlog on Lumix and you have the right cube file, you can use real-time LUT to change that vlog into S-Log. S-Log3, S-Log2. You could shoot Canon log, Nikon log, ARRI log. If you have the right cube file to convert log to log, which do exist, there's plenty of LUTs cube files that are log to Rec 709. That's what you're probably familiar with. You shoot log on your camera, so you're shooting S-Log3, you're shooting vlog, you're shooting whatever log, and then you have your LUTs, your lookup tables, your cool LUTs. You want your cool, blue steel, or you want your golden hour, or you want your whatever, surfer sunset, some crazy LUT package you have. And it converts to Rec 709 and it looks cool, it looks hip, it looks fun. But you can use LUTs, cube files, to convert log to log. And you can do this in post-production, obviously, that's how most people do it. But because these Lumix cameras have real-time LUT built in, that conversion, that log to log transform, can happen in the camera. So the files themselves are that new log profile, that new color space. I don't know if I'm using the terminology correctly. There's a lot of stuff in color that gets really goofy. Gamut and gamma and gain and LUTs and logs. But at its simplest, you can take vlog and convert it to S-Log3, for example, in the camera itself. So when you deliver those files, when you hand them off, it's as if it was shot on a Sony, or N-Log if it was a Nikon, or F-Log if it was Fuji. So if you do that, if you need to do it, maybe, for example, you might be on a shoot where there's 5 Sony cameras and you got this random Lumix camera, and it can kind of chameleon itself to fit in if it supports real-time LUT, which a lot of the newer ones do. So GH7, a G9 Mark II, S5 Mark II, the S5 Mark II X, and am I missing anything? The S9 all support real-time LUT. So any of those cameras, you can shoot in log, but whatever log you want, if you have the right cube file. Now, to get this set up and optimized for your camera, I don't want to say it's the easiest thing, because it's not, but you can kind of make it work. This is more of like the start of the rabbit hole, and it's up to you to determine how deep that rabbit hole actually goes. Because if you want to get really scientific about it, every camera has slightly different characteristics between their sensors. Even though for like forever, Lumix has just had vlog. There was vlog L earlier, the light version, but it's just been vlog on all these cameras. So the G9 Mark II shoots vlog. The S5 Mark II shoots vlog. The GH7 shoots vlog. The S9 shoots vlog. But they're all slightly different. If you look at those colors after just the normal Panasonic conversion to Rec 709, they do look slightly different because the camera sensors are all slightly different. Kind of makes sense. So to get it super accurate, super precise, you would want to make sure you have a cube file that's for that camera. So the GH7, for example, or the G9 Mark II, for example, or the S5 Mark II, for example. You want that log, the log conversion to match from the base camera to that, whatever you're transforming it to. S-Log3, S-Log2, N-Log, F-Log, Canon log, ARRI log, whatever. So, pretty cool stuff if you want to start playing around, seeing if you can get it set up for your camera in a way that makes sense. And you obviously want to test it before you do on any, professional shoots or whatever. So you want to like set it up and make sure it's all working right. But from my testing, what I've done, I'm pretty impressed with what you're able to do in terms of just shooting in a totally different log space. I don't know if that's, again, the terminology gets really weird. I want to be accurate with my words, but I also want it to make sense and be approachable. So I'm probably butchering it a little bit in terms of the precise wordage. I'm sure someone out there will correct me. But you can convert log to log in the camera. So it just looks like these files they could have come from a Sony. They could have come from an ARRI. They could have come from a Canon C whatever. from an R5, whatever, from an R6, from a Nikon, if you apply it in camera using the real-time LUT. But again, you want to be very careful. You want to be very precise with this. Again, there's a lot of like easy mistakes you could probably make. You could probably mess this up. So be careful before you do it. Definitely test it out. And it's really only going to work on the cameras that support real-time LUT. You could do this just in post-production. So if you have a bunch of different cameras, let's say you've got GoPro and DJI, not DJI. I still hear people saying DJI. I don't know if that's just easier, rolls off the tongue, but it's DJI. DJI, Nikon, Canon, like let's say you shot with like 10 different cameras. You can still, in post-production, convert them all to like a uniform standard log, if that's where you're operating in. You can convert them all to a similar log space so that your color adjustments are all applied more or less equally the same. I had to do this recently because I had some drone footage that was shot in DJI's, I think it's D-Cinelike is what they call it. So it wasn't quite log, but I was able to convert that D-Cinelike from, it was a Mini 3 Pro. The DJI drones are kind of obnoxious to track down which one's which. But anyway, it was D-Cinelike that I had to convert, and I was able to convert it to Vlog. So then like my color adjustments for everything, because the rest of the project was Vlog, my color was still one uniform layer. I'm going to probably do a tutorial on this some point of how I do color correction, and color grading, and how I think through it, because order of operations really, really matters. It's very easy when you're coloring, especially in Premiere, which is how I still do it. There's certainly some benefits to Resolve that I know a lot of people are fans of, but there's, I think, still plenty of reason to stay with Adobe Premiere as well. There's some stuff that Resolve does that I don't particularly like, but you can make really good coloring work in Premiere, but it's easy to mess it up in terms of adding more work than is necessary. You can end up with, every clip having a Lumetri profile added to it, and then you decide, hey, I want to change my vignette. Instead of -0.2, I want -0.3 for my vignette. And then you have to go update potentially thousands of effects if you're not setting your project up correctly. So what I do in general, again, this is not a full tutorial, but if you can understand what I'm saying and you can think, it's just an adjustment layer over everything. It's one adjustment layer over everything. That's my one Lumetri. Everything underneath that adjustment layer gets color applied. So I can do my log to Rec. 709 conversion first as my first part of that Lumetri effect. And then I get into contrast, highlight, shadow, sharpness, which is something you might want to change. Maybe on a clip. If a clip needs to be sharper, you could do that on a clip, or just overall, you might want to sharpen things up. Again, a vignette, an overall adjustment to your Lumiverse saturation curve as a global kind of color grading look, give it a vibe. That's kind of what color grading is, the style, the aesthetic, the vibe of it. Where color correction, I would do more on the clip. So if the clip itself was shot with the wrong white balance or it was shot with the wrong exposure, the clip gets that adjustment, but not the adjustment layer over top. I'll spend some time putting together a more proper tutorial on it, but if you can kind of get the gist of it, that might save you some time in post-production, because coloring can be as easy as like one click and you're done with some minor tweaks. Maybe you spend 5 minutes coloring and that's it. Or it could be the nightmare of hours upon hours upon hours, fine-tuning, micro-adjusting. And you can spend that time, or you can save some time and do it in 5 minutes. Same is true of audio as well. Your audio processing can be done in one click. In fact, I did a tutorial on this at one point in time. You look it up, it's on the channel, I'm pretty sure, where you just master your audio in one click and you're done, versus after the fact, spending hours and days normalizing all your volume and everything and trying to get it all perfect. I like to find those workflows that speed things up and make it way more efficient rather than requiring the huge time commitment. If I want to spend time doing something, I want to make that choice. I don't want to bake it in as a requirement. And that's kind of my mentality. There are plenty of things that you might want to spend time doing, because it's worthwhile, because it's fulfilling, because you enjoy the process. So yeah, spend as much time as you want on certain things if you enjoy doing them. But the moment it's a requirement and you know that your coloring is going to take you a day, but you have that deadline that doesn't afford you the extra day, that's where those shortcuts, that's where those efficiencies really can add up and really save you time, when at the end of it, the results are indistinguishable. You could have spent a day or you could have spent a minute, and the end result would be more or less the same. It's just order of operations, how you approach it, and how you approach that project after project after project. So you're not constantly wasting time on tedious tasks like copying and pasting your Lumetri effects and then changing your mind and then removing all your attributes and then pasting them all again. Silly stuff like that gets in the way. That's how I used to do it from back in the day before adjustment layers. But once Premiere had adjustment layers, it just made sense to operate in that kind of global mindset where everything is getting the same stuff applied. But you have to operate from that base standard where they're all the same. Otherwise, it's really tedious to track down 10 different cameras, all with 10 different color profiles. If you convert them all using something like Cinematch, which is what I use, if you convert them all to one uniform space, then it's a lot easier to manage in post-production. DaVinci has similar tools. I think it's actually more natively built into Resolve where it can easily convert between the two, but I find Resolve it's just a lot of every tutorial I see on Resolve is just a lot of extra steps. And maybe that's just an outsider's perspective, but I have watched probably 100 Resolve tutorials of how to color grade. And it feels way more complicated than it needs to be. And I just wonder, how much time are these people spending doing this work? Because the way I do it in Premiere, I'm very happy with the results. And it's a couple of clicks. It's very simple, very straightforward. Maybe it's not the best way, but it's really good. So to go back to the beginning, to start you on that journey down the rabbit hole, real-time LUT, super, super powerful. I did talk about this in another video, but it was towards the end of that video, and I think some people might have missed the point. That's why I wanted to start this one, basically saying log to log is really cool and very powerful in the camera if you can get it set up right with the proper cube files that actually take your camera and convert it to that other log. S-Log3 is probably the most common one. I would imagine a lot of people would want, just because the Sony cameras are so popular. But then think of those benefits of the Lumix cameras. Now you can shoot open gate S-Log3. Now you can have shutter angle S-Log3. Now you can have really good IBIS stabilization and still deliver S-Log3. So very cool, very powerful. I think you should check it out.